I've had laser cutters and engravers in the past, and I've had a few problems. So what has happened is I've made some mistakes. Mistake one, stinking out the building because I didn't have an enclosure. I know, stupid, but beginner. And mistake two, melting the table that it was on because I didn't have a sheet of metal underneath to protect the table. And these are all extra purchases. So you get an open frame laser, then you need a honeycomb grid underneath, so you change the focal length of what your material's on, so you're not just burning straight into your tabletop. Then there's a reflected laser, which goes and chews into the tabletop regardless, or smoke. Because of all that, it makes open frame lasers a bit of a hassle for me where I work. This, hopefully, the Creality Falcon2 Pro 40-watt laser will solve those issues, I hope, because I've got some projects I want to do. The way it's going to solve those issues is it's got an enclosure, it's got a tray, and you can pick it up and move it around and fling the hose out the window, and it should work. There is a learning curve. This is how this video is going to go. We're going to get it out of the box and just set it up. Now, it's not going to be an in-depth unboxing or build video. There's plenty of those on YouTube and they're really good. Let's not reinvent the wheel here and frankly give me extra work. I'm going to put it together. I'm going to play around with it off camera, and then when I've got a feel for it, I'm going to try and do a project. And the project that I want to do today is I want to make a hinged plywood box that will fit a 48K Spectrum, and I've got a Pro license for a service called cuttle.xyz, and it's got a really nice box template generator on there, which I'm going to be using. I'll put all the links in the description box below, but that's the aim. So if you want to see a complete failure with lasers, actually try and make something with a laser, then you've come to the right place. And if you're lucky, I might get it really wrong and you can all have a good laugh at me, but laugh we will, and we're going to laugh right now.
Mark fixes stuff. Now, I like a big box as much as the next man, but this one's really heavy. Let's see what's inside. The flaps on this box are absolutely massive, so I've had to move the camera right back. Inside we can see the usual decent amount of Creality packing. And removing some of the foam shows a sample pack. And a huge metal item, which turns out to be the tray which goes underneath the laser cutter. It's quite heavy, and you can see I have some difficulty getting it out of the box. This is a big unit. Hopefully I won't melt another table. Hopefully. In this white bag we have a segmented piece of red plastic. This must be the rolling door for the front of the enclosure. Let's pop that back into the bag for safekeeping until we need it. This must be the back of the enclosure. And removing this foam rubber shows the gubbins of the machine. There's many parts, but this isn't an unboxing or build video. I'll just time lapse it for you whilst we enjoy the music of Ben Elson. The main frame of the laser looks like any other open frame laser, and as usual it's stuck in the box. Underneath we find these kind of strut things, which are the supports for what you're cutting, and the sides of the enclosure. There's also the frame for the enclosure, and once we've got those out of the box, well, that's pretty much it. There's a lot in this package, and this isn't even all of it. I had started laying it all out for this sexy panning shot, but then I realised that I'd probably need the laser itself on the table, so I ended up sticking it all to one end. I thought I'd leave the camera running so you can see my look of bewilderment as I try to put this thing together. Oh, and the video wouldn't be complete without me shilling my ES20 Coeat electric screwdriver set. If you buy one from the link below, I'll get about 72p. It's actually really useful for things like this. For people who aren't used to a lot of wrist action. In the frame of the laser enclosure there's two tracks. You have to put the back in one of them and you have to put the front in the other. It's quite difficult to get this red sheet of plastic in. I also thought that getting ready to remove the protective cover would be a good plan. And then I went and slipped it in the wrong slot. That's more like it. Once it's in place, it actually is quite rigid. A bar screws into position and stops it flopping out. Now I've taken care of the rear, I need to sort out the front. That's the hinged part that we saw earlier. Again, I'm preemptively removing the plastic protective sheeting, because it's probably more difficult to take it apart once the enclosure is put together. And putting the sliding front in is a lot easier than the back. Once that's on, we need to screw the front panel, which is also an LED light strip. There's a right and a wrong way for this, so I have to make sure I get it correct. The sides of the laser enclosure will fix it to the main unit, so we need the laser itself on the table. I really don't want to muck this up, so I'm doing a lot of RTFMing. As you'd expect, the laser gantry is driven by two belts, X and Y. The laser head is held in this handy plate which has two thumb screws that hold it in position. The thumb screws allow adjustable height of the laser module, which is how you set the focal distance for different materials. This model also has air assist, and that connects up with this handy dandy air pipe here. For power and communications with the laser module, we just need to plug this cable into this readily available socket. And once those are both plugged in, we use the cable ties to tidy everything up. You don't want your cables flopping around. I think that will do. On other laser cutters you need to purchase a honeycomb bed, but the Creality comes with these, well, I'm not sure what they're called. Rods? They're kind of teardrop shape. I assume the sharp end goes up, but I could see a use case where the rounded thicker side could go up as well. Let's just put it with the sharp end up for now. There aren't enough rods for every slot, so we're going to use alternate slots in order to cover the entire bottom of the laser cutter. The recessed part in the middle of the laser cutter is apparently where you can lay these rods on their sides and make a single flat area. But for now I think we'll just use it like this. With those fiddly bits done, we can pop the top on. Along the front and back edges is a kind of foam that acts as a sealing material to keep all that nasty smoke inside until it's evacuated out of the window, or vent, or I don't know, into a Tupperware box. The sides have even more protective plastic, and unfortunately they've mounted the extraction fan over the top of it. I chose to flash around the edge of the fan mount rather than take the fan mount off of the plastic. If you're careful, this is a much better way of doing it. You really don't want to slip though. Oh no. And once our nerves have all been suitably racked, it's time to see if our operation was a success. Hooray! But of course our jubilation is short-lived because we soon realise that we're going to have to do it on the other side of the piece of plastic. I really took my time with this. Thank goodness we can speed up video. I also couldn't quite get the plastic started in order to take it off. But once it does start, it comes really easily. I'm going to put the fan and exhaust vent on the left hand side of this Falcon 2 Pro because that's closest to the window I'm going to use. Both sides are swappable though, which is why there's a cutout for USB which accommodates the camera at the top of this panel. The camera USB port is on the right hand side of the Falcon 2 Pro. You could also just get a longer hose. and we all dream of having a longer hose. The Falcon 2 Pro is getting quite heavy already, and we haven't even put that massive metal tray in yet. Criminy. This protective plastic is much easier to remove. There's a right and a wrong way, and of course I put it on the wrong way first. I also discovered that if you put the top screws in, then the bottom screw holes don't line up. But doing the bottom screw holes first, the top screw holes do line up. A puzzle for our modern times. With yet another piece on our laser, it's getting even heavier. Time to make some connections and mount some hose. The fan cabling simply plugs into a fan header which is here on the left hand side of the machine. Once it's plugged in, it's nice and tidy to put the cable into this gully and use your fingers to press it in, nice and tight. That really is a perfect fit for our cable. It's hard to show, but there is a second cable that just simply plugs into the laser body itself. Now, if you were to swap the sides over, the same gully, and indeed the same header pin is available on the right hand side. I am not a smart man. Many people have said it. I think even I've managed to put this together properly. I know, right? With the main body of the machine together, I got my hands busy with the hose. And it was much tighter than I expected. It was really quite a struggle, but eventually I said, hello to clean air and extraction. I'm getting quite excited now. Let's plug in the air assist unit. I do find it weird that all these lasers have the things plugged in at the front of the unit. Just seems a bit untidy to me, but it is common to most models. There's an output nipple that we need to pull off, and it's on there so tight it actually feels like it's not meant to be removed. In the kit we've got a piece of hose. One end goes on here, and of course the other end goes into the side of the machine. We have to take out the plug that I'd already put in and pop our hose in the hole. And of course internally that then connects up to the laser head assembly. Then we put our air pump interface cable back in the hole. I also decided to put the whacking great big metal tray in underneath the laser because I'm bound to forget later if I don't. And there's only so many tables that I can barbecue. That's really satisfying. In the words of Snap, I've got the power. Or what's that He-Man? I can't remember. Weirdly, this cable goes with the flat part towards the back of the machine, but I am not triggered. I mean, why would I let such a minor inconsistency wind me up? It's certainly not something I'd go on about, and I definitely won't think about it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like a lot of areas in my life, I need an extension. This box is actually incredibly well organised, I promise. For real. For real? Anyone? Never mind. At this point, time's getting on. So I plug in the power and admire my handiwork. And it does look good. Okay, so the machine's together. We need some materials now. So we're going to go to a builder's warehouse to get some plywood. Yes, I have no idea why I said plywood like that either, but we're going on a journey. A journey to get wood.
So I've got to rush because it's actually Saturday and the place I'm going to shut at 4 and it's 20 past 3. I was up till about 3 AM filming, putting the Falcon 2 together, I decided I'd just do it sort of time lapse so you could see the process out of the box to a working state. And I've got to admit, I'm still a bit worried because I don't actually know how to use it. I mean, at all, really. I did have a laser before, but because I tried it once and I stacked building out, I never tried it again. It's a really nice day today.
Oh, we're here. Got a couple of minutes left. There was a bit of a shock. I thought it was shut. Does seem to be open. Can't use that trolley. It doesn't work. We use one of these bad boys. Always got to be careful. You get one with a working wheel. Yeah. I thought the place was closed, but it appears somebody broke their front door, so we had to slip in the exit. Just got to find a ply now. Not sure if I want 5.5mm or the 3.8, something like that. Shade off of 4mm, so we'll look for it. So I think this, might be the order of the day. This is 3.6, and it is a really long sheet, which will fit in my van. This down here is 9mm. This is far too thick. I'd like the sheets at half the size, but finding them is difficult, some of my mental skill set. Okay, so found the smaller sheets of 5.5 and 3.8, which is probably good as well. So probably get a sheet off both. A lot of the sheets are very bowed, so this is a 5.5. Take one of those. Now, ridiculously massive trolley. And yeah, finding a 3.6 that isn't bowed might be a challenge. The longer sheets seem a lot less bowed, so maybe we get one of those and cut it down for the laser cutter. Alright, okay. So this is what we got. See you back in the van.
That's good. Got the longer sheet and the shorter sheet with the two different thicknesses. We're making our way back. I can burn stuff. Burning down the house.
Okay, I think the mission was successful. We'll need to cut the plywood down to get it underneath the laser, but I think this is probably the best way to go about getting some. And I also forgot that I'm meant to be downsizing. Yes, downsizing. That's a sore point. And this is the point of a saw, because we have to cut the sheets down in order to get them small enough to go in our laser cutter. It's a pain in the Harris. But it is a good way to get sheets in bulk, and it doesn't matter about the edges. Yes, that one was a bit off. But the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and no pigeons have crapped on me yet. I'm pretty sure I don't need all these sheets, but I'm not sure how many I do need, so I've decided just to cut the whole thing up. The thinner board is more difficult to cut and it grips the saw, but eventually with time, patience and perseverance, we've got what we need. So let's go back to the computer where I've been doing some more setup, particularly a piece of software called Lightburn. Lightburn isn't free, but it's the only software that seems to support the camera that's built into the Creality Falcon2 Pro. Essentially, the Falcon2 Pro gives us two USB devices. One of these is the camera, which connects to a USB port. Creality only provide USB-C to USB-A cables, but they do provide a couple of adapters in the bag. And then there's the laser cutter, which also connects to a USB port. The software driver then converts this to a COM port internally in the machine. I didn't film all the setup, but there's an excellent manual on the included USB stick. I just followed the steps, and you can too. And with everything set up, you can happily dangle your hose out of the nearest window. There's some test prints to do, but those are documented by many videos on YouTube, so we're just going to go straight into our project. To set your laser focus, you need to use this staircase gauge. There's 3 settings, but they seem to be quite broad for the materials that we'll be selecting. The laser gantry can move with the cover open, but the laser won't fire. The red cover is meant to be a filter, but wear your protective goggles anyway. For each type of material that you're going to cut, you'll need to do a test. This test is power versus speed on a grid. This makes it really easy to choose a speed and power combination for cutting through the material or engraving. If you're like me, you'll be fascinated by this process and will sit there staring at the laser. Please make sure you're wearing eye protection. Even indirect laser energy scattered or reflected off the material could potentially cause damage to your eyesight. And whilst the hood is meant to prevent that, let's take all precautions possible, please. After 10 minutes or so, we have our test piece, and it simply drops out of the board. This is very handy for this material. However, there is a fairly active user group on Facebook. The Falcon Laser Engraver official user group has lots of posts about what to do and how to do it. There's a really good guide section. And within that section there's a .clb file which you can use to install a materials library for your Creality Falcon2 Pro. And talking about excellent web resources, we need a project to do, and that's when we turn to our friends over at cuttle.xyz. This isn't an affiliate punt, it's just a really good website. We're going to be using the hinged lid box. Cuttle.xyz features a workspace, but it also has some built-in parametric generators, and that means that you can put your own figures in and generate a pattern for cutting on your laser cutter. It genuinely could not be easier. So for example, here we're setting the thickness of our material. I've just measured my wood and it's a mere 3.3mm thick. The curve setting is essentially how wide your cut is. A larger number here makes a narrower cut, which then results in a tighter fit between the 2 joints. I've measured our 48K spectrum, and width-wise it's 237mm. The depth from the front to the back of the machine is 144mm. And the height of the machine, including one of its rubber feet, is 33mm. We set our generator to work on inner dimensions. And you can actually see the pattern updating in real time. Now we could download the SVG right now, but there would be a problem if we did this. This is quite a large layout and it's not shaped nor sized correctly for our piece of material. So in that case we're going to open in the Cuttle editor. The Cuttle editor is actually quite a good standalone editor for SVGs. You can create from scratch in here. But we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is select the elements in the menu on the left and export each element as a separate SVG. Then when we go back to Lightburn, we'll be able to import them all independently and move them around to our liking. It's a little bit more work, but this way we can save material. And we really have ultimate control about where we cut on our piece of material in case we wanted to miss any knots or blemishes. And positioning our cuts is where the Falcon2 Pro really comes into its own. With its built-in camera, we can really see where our cuts are going to occur on our material. You can rotate, spin, or even mirror the items that you put into the software. In the end, I was fairly happy just avoiding the very edges of the material where I'd sawn it so roughly. And before committing to any cut or burn or engravature, I would select the Home button. This way, if you have moved the laser gantry, it will home and know where it's starting from. Really important for cutting accurately on materials. Just a side note, there's very minimal odour in the room. When I tried the previous laser, the entire building was filled with smoke. And we are done. I'm genuinely excited to try this. Okay, so it's just cut out of cheap plywood. Perhaps it's not as artisanal as others' laser cut offerings, but it is our first project. And the parts fall easily from the material. Brilliant. A slight boo-boo here because I've left the retail sticker on the wood, but I'm sure it will come off easily enough. There's also something that I've just decided to do, and indeed I could have done this at the same time as cutting, but I only really thought about it halfway through cutting the box. Well, actually remembered halfway through. I want to engrave something on the lid, therefore I'm trying to really square this up with the grid. And pressing home again to ensure the laser head is in a known position, I fire up the software. I found this SVG on Wikimedia Commons, and it was vectorized by Dan Patrick, so thank you Dan. I sort of took a guess at the settings for this, and I'm not sure I picked the right ones. For wood burning, you need to go for the least amount of charring outside of your pattern. But I think it's pretty good for a first attempt. What do you think? If I made this again, I'd make the kerf value a little higher, just to make the joints tighter, but nothing a bit of wood glue won't fix. But it's when I put the hinge lid on, I start to feel really happy with what we've made. This was a first project, but I'd be happy to spend money on more expensive materials knowing that this has really worked out quite well. And yes, I know it's a bit pointless, but who said that fun had to have a point? With my limited knowledge, I'm not sure where to go next with this. What would you do? Would you sand that logo down to get rid of some of the charring? Maybe you'd varnish it afterwards. Let me know in the comments section below. And thank you for watching. Also a big thanks to my patrons who are appearing on the screen right now. My patrons keep me going through the good times and the bad. Right now I have to downsize to a smaller unit, but be aware I will be continuing to make videos and my patrons help me with that. Patrons get ad-free early access to all my videos. There's also an exclusive patron Discord chat that nobody uses because nobody wants to talk to me. And patrons also get the incredible ability to know how many jelly beans are in the jar. That might be a lie. Oh, it's recording. Seriously though, thanks for watching and thanks to my patrons. They are absolutely amazing. Hey, you've watched this far. Why don't you go and watch one of these other videos? I know what you're thinking. It's him again. But you love me really.